So, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to the Morris and Helen Belkin Art Gallery on this beautiful day. I'm Naomi Sawada, and I manage public programs. And before Scott starts, just one brief housekeeping item that Michael here will be documenting the tour. It'll be up on YouTube and onto our video kiosk during the show. So if you do not wish to be seen on the web, please just be mindful of the camera's eye. And the other just housekeeping thing is no drinks or any food allowed into the galleries. Okay, Scott.
Okay, thanks Naomi.
You're welcome.
I'm Scott Watson. I'm the director here at the Belkin Art Gallery, and I curated the show, so I'm going to give a tour of it. I thought I'd start just by giving some broad parameters about how the show came into being. In the summer we often like to show the collection. We have quite a large collection, and the summer is a good time to show it. There's a couple of ways you can make shows from a collection. Individual artists, media, genres like abstract art or something like that. But there's another thing you can do is maybe tell a story. And so this came about through knowing that we had in the collection the Mark Sue, which is at the end. We bought it many years ago. The Roy Arden had been given to us, the Anne Raz had been given to us. And I thought, you know, there's enough work in this collection to do a show about English Bay. But I thought, well, why would I? The theme is a bit too anodyne. It's too, is that a landscape show? What is that? Why would I do it? And then two things happened kind of simultaneously. A donor gave us the Mark Lewis, which is at the end there, and the oil spill happened. And I thought, oh, this theme, I've got a theme now, thanks to the oil spill. I can really do some research and give the occasion maybe a bit of an edge or something more to bounce off than English Bay and boats, which is what I thought of. I realized that the natural surround of Vancouver is actually heavily industrialized with resource extraction. It always has been, but we tend to turn that into the picturesque. We tend to normalize it. You go down to Wreck Beach and as far as you can see, there's log booms. People think it's pretty. I don't know. And all the boats in the harbor, I'll talk about that in a minute. So I realized that something could be said here that's a bit different. I started researching English Bay. Just Google English Bay. You'll get kind of a tourist website, and it will immediately strike you that there's something wrong with it. For people who've read anything about post-colonial discourse, it starts with Captain Vancouver. And when it comes to mention the clams and stuff on the beach, then it sort of mentions the First Nations, along with clams on the beach. It doesn't give you any history of this area before Captain Vancouver arrived. So then I went to Captain Vancouver, and I read some other things too. And I was really struck by something I'd never known before. And it's not in this show, but I want to tell you about it because it haunts me, which is that, well, two things. Vancouver, when he goes to the Gulf Islands, he's describing them as very pastoral, European, familiar-like landscapes. By the time he gets not so much further north, like around here, he's beginning to describe the landscape as gloomy, melancholy, desolate, monotonous. And this is June, July. I guess it could be raining and stuff, but it's a real change of tone. And it's where I got the term melancholy from Captain Vancouver's voyages. So the term is also in the show here and there. But then I read an article, I can't remember by whom, about early BC, the establishment of the settler society. And there's research and a body of thought that believes that the deserted villages that Vancouver saw and remarked upon in this part of the world were deserted because there had been a smallpox epidemic about 10 years before he arrived, and even before the Spanish arrived. Therefore, European history arrives before we do in the form of diseases that are going through native trade routes. And apparently this epidemic could have decimated as much as 60% of the population, which is why these villages, well-built villages that he describes that may house maybe 600 people, are deserted. It's not as we're often taught that the sailors built villages and then went off fishing and then built a village somewhere else. No, there had been a a historical catastrophe here before Vancouver arrived. And I wanted to weave that in with the notion of melancholy. That something awful had happened that's not noted and not part of our remembered history. So that's preface to this. So, just to explain how the installation went and what we were trying to do with it. The installation was done by me and our head technician Owen Sopachuk, and we're kind of limited by the space, restrictions of the gallery. Certain works need darkness, other works require light. But we thought it would be a good idea to frame the exhibition with these two large monochromatic works. And maybe we can go down and look at the Mark Lewis. Mark is a Canadian artist who's living in London. He's lived there for quite some time. He's become very well known in Europe. He represented Canada at the Venice Biennale, gosh, about 6 years ago. And for the past 20 years almost, he's been making short films as his work. And this is a film he shot in 2010, I believe. And it's shot at Clear Beach, which is a place that Mark used to go quite frequently when he lived here in the 90s for about 5 years, teaching here. And Mark is very interested in historic and now obsolete film techniques, using analog film, etc. So this is a day for night technique, where a daylight scene is shot using various filters and processes to make it look like it's a night scene. So this is shot in the daytime to look at night. And the result is something that looks very film noir. It's got that, the blacks are deep. The Vancouver sky often provides ampleness of gray and low cloud cover that makes it feel kind of oppressive and ominous. In the context of the theme I've chosen for this show, like to foreground the oil spill, I mean, it's not what Mark intended, I'm sure, but there are two freighters in the harbor. I haven't fully researched this, but I've lived in Vancouver all my life. And I remember when there were hardly ever any freighters in the harbor. And I think that at some point in the late 60s or 70s, there was a dock strike, a long one. And the harbor filled up with freighters, and it's been full of freighters ever since. So I guess what it means is that the traffic in the harbor far exceeds its ability for dock space. And of course that will increase if there's oil going in and out of the harbor, which is the issue that I think this exhibition wants to foreground. So this film is very short, it's about 4 minutes long. I'd say it's practically eventless. The water's coming in. At one point we'll see a bird fly across, and at another point we'll see a smaller boat. Since the 1960s, had a small fisherman's float cabin on the intertidal zone in Dollarton. Sometimes it gets woven into the history of squatting, but strictly speaking, it was not a squat because the land was privately owned, and the owners of the land, which was used for industrial. The Port Authority wishes to destroy the cabin and destroy all the assemblages that Carol and Hal have built in the forest and build them. That's the preferred course of action of the Port Authority, even though there's this other possible route of action. At least that was what Carol told me 3 weeks ago. I don't know, do you have an update?
They did get the permits, and the cabin's being moved on Monday.
Okay, thanks. I'm out of date, so the story's happier than it was 3 weeks ago. But it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
At any rate, it's quite a saga. So this cabin, I think it was probably built in the 30s. It does tie into the history of squatting on the North Shore. And, you know, fairly revered, famous artists have been working there. So there's a real effort to save it. So when I went and visited Al and Carol, I noticed this on the wall, something that Al made in the cabin. It's every news story about Burrard Inlet from like 1967 to 2007. Carol said sometimes things fall out, she just jams them back in. But I regarded it as a collage or sculpture rather than something I was actually going to take apart and read. There's more of Carol's work in the other room, but one of the things she does, or did at the cabin, was to observe the geese. So she makes fake geese out of duck decoys, and she observes the geese, and Carol produces these things she calls binder books. So this is the actual binder book. They're very beautifully crafted things. It's about observing the geese, but so you can actually read it. We've made a facsimile on the case if you want to actually read it. So in the hallway, I've placed a number of works by B.C. Binning. B.C. Binning's a mid-century British Columbia artist. He's actually the founder of the art history department and visual art department here at UBC. He was an amateur architect and a painter who studied in Paris with Corbusier's brother, Amédée Ozenfant. And he started painting in the 30s and 40s. And one of his themes was boats. He loved boats. He had a boat, and he went out on the boat all summer long. He lived in West Vancouver. So a big thematic in his work is leisure boating life, fishing boating life, and it's very idyllic. So he portrays English Bay, Howe Sound, and these environments as a kind of paradise. You can even see in this drawing, it's kind of allegorical. I don't know what the drawing is called, but I would call it Adam and Eve. So there's a tree growing here, and he's made it as though this man in a rowboat looks like it's a fruit off the tree, and at the bottom there's a woman disrobing, about to go swimming. So it's a very, it's a real image of the shore in this part of the world as paradise. So basically, by putting these newspapers on the wall, I wanted to contrast his vision of the bay as paradise and the boats as beautiful, lyrical, wonderful objects, with maybe the more menacing pictures of boats associated with the oil spill. So that's basically what I was trying to do. So, so yes, it is paradise, but it's under duress. Kind of out of sequence of what I want to talk about, but at the end there is a piece made in 1972 by Michael Morris and some of his associates, and it's kind of a conceptual piece. They'd all probably seen a film by Jerry Shum called Land Art, where conceptual artists made films, and one of the things you could do is play perspective games. So that's what this is. They made these colored dots in the primary colors, and then, it's a slide sequence which we've converted to video. It's on Spanish banks, so it's kind of abstract. It's about perspective games, basically. And I put it there because the painting down at the end, B.C. Binning likes to use these primary colors too, so I guess it's the interior decorating side of the paintings. Put things together like that. It's called Dot Depth of Field. And as Michael observed, I think interestingly, when he saw this installed at the opening, that the landscape aspect of it is historical. In other words, the landscape's changed since 1970. So let's go into the main gallery. There's a number of works in here, and two of them are making sound, so I'll try and talk over them. This is a work by Anne Ramsden. Anne Ramsden's a Montreal artist, but she taught at Simon Fraser for, 8 or 9 years in the 1990s. And this is a piece she made about Vancouver. And it's basically a video. The video is about 27 minutes long. It's about two women who are traveling, going around Vancouver, scouting for film location sites. The notion is a common one among artists who notice that they live in a city that is often in films or TV shows as another city. In other words, there's a generic quality to Vancouver that it can stand in for all these other places, but is rarely portrayed as itself. People rarely make a portrait of Vancouver as part of a film or a TV series. So they're looking for location sites, and the film they're going to make would be based on Jean-Luc Godard's La Chinoise, about young people in the 60s who've gotten involved with Maoism. So that's the premise of the film. I noticed in the text, there's a long text here on this premise of this. So one of the sites is English Bay, and one of the sites is the sulfur piles in North Vancouver. That's why I wanted to conclude it in the show. But the day Dorothy left, she asked me to drive her out to the Anthropology Museum. She said it was her favorite place in the city, but it made her melancholic, conscious of her own cultural background. So I thought that, in this context, that sentence jumped out at me. So from Anne's piece, we'll go to Christos Dikiakis' piece, because I think that thematic runs through here. Christos is a Vancouver artist, and in the for about 4 years, between I think 1989 and 1993, he researched and began to make work on if we could recover Musqueam and Salish place names in the greater Vancouver area. So he spent a lot of time doing that. Then he would photograph these places, as you can see, and then he would, on etched glass, that would be I think that's a Musqueam name, I'm not sure. As you may or may not know, there's often disputes between the Musqueam and the Salish about just which part of English Bay and Vancouver traditionally belongs to which group, which allows the city always to acknowledge neither claim. So these are the pieces, and then these, in the cases, are studies for other pieces. So again, to bring part of Chris's work is to do this historical awakening. And it reminds me, a couple of years ago I was in Mumbai, and we were driving by this place, and somebody said, pointed to some houses on the other side, in between the road and the bay. Said, that's a 2,000-year-old fishing village there. I said, isn't that amazing? And then, of course, I thought, gosh, I live in a city where there's a 6,000-year-old village within the city limits, which is Musqueam. So why did I think that was amazing in Bombay? Well, it's downtown, that's why. But it just struck me that, we also have this, it's not a continuity, it's a discontinuity, but we have a rupture that in our history that needs to become more visible, I think. At any rate, part of Chris's work is to mend that rupture by reminding us that there are other names for the places around here than the ones that the English settlers gave them. So this in here, these works are here. This is more Carol Itter. There's two different projects here. So these collages and this study and these are all studies for a really large installation project she's doing about Burrard Inlet, which is called the Inlet. If we'd have included this in the show, we wouldn't have been able to include much else. It's 60 feet long if it's ever done. So, but I just wanted to indicate, the scope of her project and kind of what it looks like, and the sort of things that come out of it, like these collages, which are not part of the installation per se, but studies that pertain to it, and they are, of course, images of Burrard Inlet. She's also made a few films, and this is one of them. And the score to the film is by Al Neal, piano score. So it's a mirror image where things can disappear into the fold in the middle. There's text describing this process and what she thinks it indicates. The piece is now called Inlet rather than Up, Inlet, Down. But what's interesting about it to me is that you look at it, it is Burrard Inlet, I'm not quite sure where, but it looks very idyllic. There's the forest, there's little boats, and then right in the middle of it, of course, a big freighter comes in, and you realize, again, the juxtaposition between leisure and industry is, they're just tightly tied together. It's not a very long film, it's about 3 minutes long. So you will see this freighter. Carol, with this piece also, in her geese studies, she has a goose costume, which she will wear and perform in. Somebody should film that before too long. Maybe I'll talk a bit about the piece behind by Marion and her background. Marion is a photographer. She won a Gay Prize for Lifetime Achievement a few years ago. This is a photo of using a process she also often uses with photography, which is to investigate personal memory. So there's actually 2 sites. One is English Bay, and the photographs are taken from the water, from a boat. Here comes the freighter.
There's the freighter.
Oh, there it is. There's the freighter. I think Carol's hope is that it's reflected things last and didn't disappear.
Yeah. It's not happening, though, you know. Maybe.
So Marion's piece has got text in it. It's actually a bookwork, and the bookwork is laid out for you so that you can see every page. Marion has, besides investigating personal memory, has always worked with the materiality of the photographic print. In other words, she wants you to feel there's the substantiality of the paper, and she wants the image to occupy real space as well as the visual space. And she likes to work large. So when she was asked to do a bookwork, she got a commission. Her solution was to work from these photographs. She sliced them in 2 so that so you'll see these 2 pages are this photograph. The bottom is presented before the top, and that the bookwork, although it's kind of compact, when it folds out, it becomes kind of a sculptural object. So I don't know what the personal memory quite is, but this is the Vedder Crossing, which I think is in Chilliwack. She's from there, yeah. So it's about her childhood, and the commentary, the text, refers to somewhat to the issue of the show. Do not land, keep freighters at bay, behind filled with lumber and coal and hay, etc. And then also referring to the native past of the area where she grew up. Let's go around the Some of the works in the show really are about English Bay. The one behind me is is a study for a mural that's now in the convention center. Maybe you don't go to the convention center very often, I don't. But it's by Roy Arden, and it's to scale. It's the scale of the actual mural. This is paper on aluminum. I think the actual mural is printed directly on the aluminum somehow. So this would be his final proof that he got to approve the color balance and stuff like that. So it's the artist's proof for the mural. And Roy is known for working with archival photographs. So he worked with archival photographs of English Bay. I don't know the year the photographs are from, but I would suspect it's about 1912 maybe, from what people are wearing and what's there as a built environment. And he's taken them and repeated them and allowed them to superimpose over each other, which creates kind of a ghostly feeling. Roy wrote a text about these, which is about leisure. But I have to say, when I look at it, I see things that are quite typical of Roy, which is he zeroes in on a gesture like this. This is the central figure of the whole mural. This child going like this. So what is going on? Is the child been startled, or hiding, playing a game, or it's an image of blindness. So I don't know what allegorical heft it has, but it's unmistakably there. So it's not completely idyllic.
Same child.
Yeah, the same child. Yeah, because the images are repeated, I think, 4 times. You will see the figure the same figure 4 times. So, the child is there, and where else it is? Yeah. So here's the diver. The diver's maybe easy to find. The diver's there. The diver's there. But the diving board is gone. The diver's there. No, I think you see them 3 times. At any rate, it's interesting how this repetition and superimposition works.
That's a dead man's float, right? Somebody's doing that?
Yeah.
Protection.
Okay. So on this wall, these are all works by Irene Hoffer-Reed. Irene Hoffer-Reed was a student of Fred Varley's. Varley and Jock MacDonald and Harry Towers started a breakaway art school in Vancouver. It lasted about 2 years. I can't remember what those 2 years were, but they're both in the, is it 1929, 1930? Something like that. It was in where Maynard's used to be on Georgia Street, if any of you remember that. Like, I think in between Thurlow and Butte. Or in between Butte and the next one, Jarvis. So I think you can see part of the Varley-MacDonald ideology in this, which is that the local environment is ripe for mystical treatment. So, and also a bit of social realism. So this palette is used, which is prismatic, like lots of indigos and purples fading into yellows and reds, to indicate that indicate a spiritual auratic presence that wouldn't ordinarily be visible to the eye, that the artist can bring out. So to me, it's obvious that she's into this, that she's getting this from the art school that she's going to. I think you can see it whenever she uses color. It does have this kind of prismatic, otherworldly radiance. And also the sense of the high view of the ocean. Varley did this a lot too of English Bay, but we don't have any Varleys of English Bay. There aren't any in Vancouver, really. But the sense that this is also, it's not just English Bay, but it's an inner spiritual ocean of calm and meditation and all the rest of it. But she's also interested, of course, in people, things going on at the beach that are industrial, but she makes them kind of timeless. So her fishermen are, well, they're like a Mexican mural. And even in this little sketch for some people gathered around a guitar singing songs, she's trying to imagine kind of a mural-esque monumentality to them. So I think she's an interesting artist. She's certainly much overlooked. These drawings also, of course, contain a very interesting historical record of what English Bay and Kitts Beach once looked like and the kind of structures that were on them. On either wall, there's two other works which fit this color scheme of the room. That's a painting by Gordon Smith called Dunderray from the 70s. I think it's obvious that Gordon at that time was very interested in the work of San Francisco artist William Debecorn, in which a landscape, seascape is both geometrically abstract and painterly abstract, and it's both landscape and it's also architecture. And we had it cleaned before we showed it, that's why it looks good. Probably had a layer of cigarette smoke on it from whoever owned it before. And this is a photograph by Stephen Waddell. Stephen is a Vancouver photographer who studied with Jeff Wall. Stephen, unlike Jeff, does not pose or construct his pictures. He finds his subjects and takes a picture. We think we know who this is, but I haven't asked Stephen to be sure. But it's an arresting image. It's a bay. The young man's gone into the water. We don't know why. He's wearing his jeans, so it's either so hot, it's a moment of release, or he's inebriated and doesn't care, or what. We just don't know why he's doing what he's doing. But with the unknown, perhaps even wild implications of his action, the whole composition is very static and classical and monumental. He's right in the center of the picture with a classical nude kind of feeling to it.
There's an odd kind of a tension, like he could be a quarterback holding the ball, ready to
exactly.
release it.
Exactly. There's an implied action about to take place, and we don't know what it is. Yeah, it's a very, very good observation. So the last work is next door.
And was friends with Vera.
Wow.
I think they might even be a little earlier.
It might be 26, 27.
Yeah. I certainly
well, the art school started in 26 itself.
Okay, so maybe it was...
And then there was a wage dispute.
Oh, okay.
And so Varley and Jock McDonald decided they're going to start their own school.
Oh, right.
And if neither of them were businessmen. You couldn't make money from running an art school anyway. So it was after 2 years, it just collapsed.
Okay. So this was, I think, before that.
Yeah.
26, 27.
So this is a work by Mark Sue. It's the work that kept nagging me, install me, and figure out a way to install me. Mark was a fairly young artist when he made this. And the gain of it, the premise of it, is that I can't show you this, but you have to believe me. This is a color transparency of the sunset in Inlet Bay. And it's being illuminated by these yellow sodium lights. These yellow sodium lights are used in places like Open Manor Park because they cut out, they make monochrome, they cut out violet, so you can't see the veins. So he's juxtaposed, the romance of the sunset. He's deprived of us of that romance, given us a monochrome sunset, using this technique of controlling public space so that drug users don't use it. It's a very interesting and provocative juxtaposition. I have to find this out, but I read somewhere, and I don't know whether Mark said it or someone interpreting his work said it, that part of what he wants to maybe provoke is thinking about the kind of meditative high you get looking at the sunset and the more artificial high you would get using drugs. I'm not sure if that's there in the work or not, but thought I'd bring it forward. So again, the whole show is framed by these two monochrome views of English Bay. So interestingly enough, when I delved into the collection around the theme English Bay, I found lots of work there that actually did meditate on English Bay in kind of dystopic ways, I have to say. That's how the show came to be and my understanding of some of the works that are in it. So does anyone have any questions or comments?
Oh, I think you gave a great talk. Really fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It seems like the show together in record time.
Well, I've been thinking about the English Bay thing for a while.
Is that spooky that then the oil spill happened?
Yeah. Yes.
It's your fault.
No, it's not. But no, it had been back. I always have in my mind various thematic shows that the collection can produce, and this had always been one of them because of this work. It wasn't just the oil spill. The collectors who gave us the Mark Lewis, that happened 4 months ago. And when that happened, yeah.
This has such a quality of age to it.
Yeah.
It could be a very old photograph.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite beautiful, even though it's this room, if you stand in it for a while, the orange will begin to bother you. At least it bothers me. It's an uncomfortable color. It's an uncomfortable.
You don't want to shoot up?
No, I don't. It doesn't make me want to shoot up.
Shoot up popsicles.
This is a great and flexible space.
It is.
I've
It is.
been lots of times to exhibits here, and it's not a big space, but it's really.
It's very flexible.
Yeah.
Scott,
Yeah?
just for the sake of illustration, all we do to turn this off at night is unplug it.
Yeah.
Why don't you pull the plugs on the two lamps and let people's eyes see the...
I don't know. Do I go there? No. I don't think so.
All right.
For one thing, it takes a good hour for the lights to get back up to the intensity. They build slowly, so I don't want to.
Great.
Yeah.
No, it's reproduced. You can look it up online. It's reproduced. The color image is
Oh
reproduced.
yeah, of course I've seen it.
Yeah.
That's an incredible fact about open fire, that they use those lamps.
Yeah.
Well, do they? Is that a fact? I didn't research it.
I'm
A lot
sure
of
they
public
do.
washrooms as well.
Yeah.
A lot
Okay.
of public washrooms in the downtown east side.
Okay.
The light
Yeah.
is the same with precisely that same.
I never
Okay.
knew that till today.
Yeah,
I don't
me
think it's
neither.
public knowledge.
It's like defensive architecture, right?
Yeah.
Like
Benches.
classical music where kids drive them because they don't like.
But
Yeah.
that's benign.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Fabulous.